Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to confront some deeply unsettling truths about human psychology and the sheer calculated mechanics of manipulation. I want you to mentally prepare yourself, because the information we're breaking down from our source material today is absolutely going to challenge your most fundamental, deeply held assumptions about empathy, human connection, and what really lies beneath the surface of the people around you. We are dismantling the architecture of the psychopathic mind.
You know, when we cross paths with someone who routinely hurts, deceives, or manipulates others, our natural instinct is to try and humanize their behavior, right? We ask ourselves, are manipulative people merely flawed? Take a second and really think about how you usually answer that in your own life. We tend to project our own moral compass onto them. We just assume they made a mistake, or that deep down they feel the exact same regret we would. But our source material completely shatters this assumption.
It's a very dangerous, albeit super common misconception to view profound manipulation as just a temporary lapse in judgment or some minor character flaw. We want to believe someone is just having a bad day, but the reality is starkly different. These individuals are functioning on an entirely different operating system. They aren't just stumbling into bad behavior, they're operating within a highly calculated framework, and this framework is specifically, meticulously designed for chronic deception and the ruthless exploitation of other human beings. It's a completely different way of processing the world.
Section 1. The Dark Triad Explained. The 3 pillars of a dangerous personality. Okay, let's dive straight into this and look at the exact traits that make up this operating system. We're going to examine what psychologists refer to as the Dark Triad. This is the amalgamation of 3 highly destructive personality traits that, when combined, construct this incredibly dangerous psychological architecture. The first pillar is Machiavellianism. Imagine looking at the people in your life, your friends, your colleagues, your family, and feeling absolutely no inherent connection to them. Instead, you possess a deeply cynical worldview where every single person is seen merely as a pawn on a chessboard. They have zero intrinsic value other than what they can do for you. They're just objects to be moved, manipulated, and sacrificed whenever it suits your strategy. That is the cold, calculating reality of the Machiavellian trait.
The second pillar is narcissism. Now, this goes way beyond just being a little vain or self-absorbed. We are talking about extreme egocentrism coupled with a completely inflated sense of superiority. A person governed by this trait truly believes they're operating on a higher plane than the rest of humanity. And because of this grandiose self-image, they demand endless, unrelenting external validation. The people around them exist primarily to serve as a mirror, reflecting back their own perceived greatness.
The final, and honestly the most disturbing pillar, is psychopathy itself. This trait is characterized by a profound lack of effective empathy. That means they simply do not feel what you feel. Combine this with high impulsivity and, most importantly, a chilling absence of remorse or guilt when hurting others. Just let that sink in for a moment. They can destroy a career, a relationship, or a life, and sleep perfectly soundly that night. The internal mechanism that generates guilt simply doesn't exist for them.
Section 2. Cognitive Empathy as Radar. How the Psychopathic Mind Navigates Society.
So, this raises a fascinating and frankly terrifying question. If psychopaths lack genuine emotion and have absolutely no affective empathy, how do they navigate society so effectively? How do they blend in, get promoted, and charm the people around them? Well, let's look at the difference between how a normal person and a psychopathic person perceive a room. For most of us, empathy means internal emotional resonance. If you see someone crying, you literally feel a pang of sadness in your own chest. But the psychopathic mind utilizes something called cognitive empathy. And as our source material explains, this does not function as a human connection. Instead, it functions as a predatory radar system. They intellectually process that you are sad, but they don't feel a single drop of that sadness themselves. They're scanning, not feeling.
To this mind, your distress, your joy, your insecurities, they're all just processed intellectually as raw data points. When you're going through a tough time and baring your soul, you feel vulnerable. But to a highly manipulative individual with these traits, you're simply handing over data. They take that data, analyze exactly what you need to hear or see in that moment, and use it to flawlessly perform and mimic the appropriate emotions required to manipulate the situation to their advantage.
Section 3. The Neurological Hardware. Inside the emotion center of the brain.
And this brilliantly illustrates that this isn't just some behavioral choice, it's a physiological reality. To truly grasp why they can operate this predatory radar without feeling any internal resonance,
We have to look beneath the surface of psychology and look directly at the neurological hardware of the brain itself. Deep inside your brain is an almond-shaped cluster of nuclei called the amygdala. This serves as the brain's emotion center. In a normal human brain, when you witness another human being in distress, your amygdala immediately lights up. It becomes highly active. This biological firing is what naturally triggers your feelings of compassion, fear, and empathy. Your hardware is literally wired to connect with the pain of others.
But neurological studies reveal a very different landscape in the psychopathic brain. When exposed to the exact same emotional stimuli, when witnessing someone in profound distress, their amygdala remains severely underactive. In many cases, it is functionally dormant. The hardware required to generate that automatic, compassionate response is essentially unplugged. The biological signal that tells a normal person, "Stop, you're hurting someone," simply never gets sent.
Section 4. Fabricated Emotions and Leverage. Decoding the Deceptive Mimicry.
Understanding the dormant hardware is absolutely crucial because it completely changes how we must interpret their behavior in the real world. If their brain doesn't generate real emotion, then what exactly are we looking at when they appear sad, sorry, or hurt? We need to pivot to the practical application of this knowledge so you can decode this deceptive mimicry when it happens right in front of you. When you're dealing with a highly psychopathic or manipulative individual, you have to remember that their internal emotional engine is entirely cold. Therefore, any emotional display, especially things like crying or acting vulnerable, is completely fabricated. It's deceptive mimicry. Why do they do it? Because they know your normal, healthy brain is wired to respond to distress. They're using this mimicry to bypass your natural defenses. To them, their own tears are never a genuine call for your compassion. Those tears are utilized purely as leverage. They are a tactical maneuver executed to achieve a hidden, manipulative agenda.
So the crucial point is summarized perfectly right here in what the source material calls the empathy divide. It explains the entirety of the chasm between normal human empathy and the psychopathic operating system. Look at the stark contrast. When observing distress, the normal mind feels internal resonance. The psychopathic mind remains completely detached and just processes raw data. When shedding tears, the normal mind is having an authentic reaction. The psychopathic mind is executing a calculated performance for leverage. And fundamentally, at the brain activity level, the normal amygdala is highly active, while the psychopathic amygdala is severely underactive or completely dormant.
We've explored the Dark Triad, the predatory radar of cognitive empathy, and the dormant hardware of the brain. You now have a solid roadmap to the architecture of this dangerous mindset. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. The next time you find yourself faced with an unexpected, dramatic emotional display from someone who routinely manipulates you, will you see a call for compassion or a calculated performance for leverage?